Hey guys, it's Gaz. Welcome to the Warframe video. So I am making a tier list today on all of the Warframes currently in the game. This tier list encompasses all the Warframes currently, and it is taking all game modes into account. So we're talking arbitrations, Kuba survival, normal missions, Eidolon fights, Profit Taker, etc, etc. So when you look at this list right now, there are certain things that are taken into account and weighted pretty heavily on some of these frames, and that's why some of these rankings might look weird to you. Okay, so I basically the reason I wanted to make a tier list like this is, for one, I've always thought tier lists are just fun to read to see what people think about this certain character. Like, for example, Super Smash Brothers. Like, why does this person think Joker's the best character in the game besides Persona 5 being awesome? So things like that. So I'm going to put up the tier list for you guys. I'm also going to put some gameplay on the side too, so you can, if you want to like look at something while I'm describing why I put these certain characters on certain tiers. Perfect. Okay, so let's get the tier list. Here's the tier list right here, and then let's get some gameplay up. This is some gameplay of me doing the low-level wolf mission, just to farm for the mask. I did get the mask after like 10 runs, but I don't think we got the drop in these videos. Alright, so let's start off with the bottom tier. So we're going to go from the top and move up. So we have Vauban in the bottom tier. We also have Banshee, Ember, Wukong, Nyx, and Baruch. And I don't want to say that these frames aren't playable, because they are totally playable, guys. But I don't see myself playing these frames very often. Unless I'm just like feeling like I need to do some fashion frame stuff. The reason that these frames are so low down is that their job is completed by another frame much better, and the frame that's taken their job usually has a much easier time doing it, or is much more survivable, or has some other reason or some utility that's pushing them above these frames. So for example, with Vauban, he basically just does CC right now, and CC is not enough nowadays. I know he is getting a rework, so he definitely can go up in the ranks very easily after a rework that makes his kit a little bit more maybe mobile, or add some damage in there. Basically, Cora takes Vauban's job and just completely dominates him. So that's the reason Vauban is bottom tier. Banshee actually has some very strong abilities with her second ability and the augment mod, but ever since Banshee got her area of effect damage nerfed heavily, when the augment mod for her 4 was nerfed, she has not been as useful anymore, and the debuff she does, it is very powerful and still is useful, but the fact that Banshee takes like one bullet and dies kind of kills it for a lot of people, and her AoE damage, like Sarin, Equinox, whoever, can just completely take that away. So that's why Banshee is bottom tier. She could possibly be in C tier. I do still play Banshee sometimes, but definitely not a top tier frame anymore like she used to be. Okay, and we have Ember. Ember, another frame that has been nerfed, and that's why she is down here at the low tier. So once we hopefully get another Ember rework someday, we will be able to play her again. I've been trying to make her work, and that Sakura Penta Napalm Grenades mod really does help her a lot and helps her almost get into the C tier. But honestly, like, it's just not worth playing Ember anymore, guys. You could just play Sarin, or you could play Equinox, or whatever other DPS you feel like playing. Mesa. You'll be a lot safer, and you'll also probably have a lot better scaling damage. It's not even a problem. You definitely will have much better scaling damage with one of those frames that is not Ember, because heat damage is terrible, guys. That's one of the reasons I think Wisp's 4th ability might be bad, is because it's heat damage, and heat damage in Warframe is much worse than almost every other base elemental. Alright, so let's move on to Wukong. So Wukong is, he basically is just invincible. He doesn't do anything else besides that, in my opinion. He has like his stick attack. It doesn't really do enough damage. You could just play Inaros, or you could play Chroma, or you could play Revenant, and you'd have probably a much better time. I do like Wukong's aesthetic. I think he has some really cool helmets, and I like his Tenogen skin a lot too. But he doesn't do enough useful stuff in the grand scheme of things that makes him anywhere below the bottom tier. Okay, so we could go more into depth with Wukong, but I don't want to be here all day. So let's move on to Nyx. Nyx, one of my old favorite frames in the entire game. Unfortunately, she is in a similar boat to Vauban, where her CC is just not useful enough anymore. And she has an armor removal skill now on her too, but it only works on 6 enemies at a time. And that's usually not a big deal, but at the same time, you have to be playing Nyx to get these abilities. Unlike Ashe, where Ashe can go invisible and strip armor, Nyx is basically just a sitting duck while she strips armor. So that makes her very dangerous to play in a lot of situations, and I'm really sad to say that she is bottom tier, even after her rework. Okay, And we have Baruch. Baruch is actually, like, not bad. He probably doesn't even deserve to be in D tier, but the thing is, he doesn't really have a place in the game at all. All he does really is he's a tanky dude. He can put people to sleep if you didn't make your build not able to put things to sleep, like a lot of builds are. And he has his punch attack. His punch attack is really cool. You have to build up to it, unlike a lot of other frames, but they don't need to build up to their special ability. They just have their special ability immediately, which does a ton of damage. And Baruch is just, he's constrained by a lot of things, like the design choices with him. I think they did a good job making like a pacifist feeling kind of Warframe, but he just isn't very useful in the grand scheme of things, although he can be tanky. Alright, so we're moving out of the D tier, guys. We're moving to C tier. Like I said, D tier is still, you can still play these frames, and I'll still play these frames sometimes, but the main thing is that there's better choices. Okay, so we're moving to C tier, where these frames, they have their own place in the game sometimes, or they have a certain ability that makes them a lot stronger than the D tier frames. So let's start off with Titania. Titania is, she gets a pretty bad rep from a lot of people, but those people probably don't realize how crazy Titania's DPS is in her Razor Wing. With the Augment mod, she can move really fast, she can fire really fast, you can even kill Eidolons with her, although I would not recommend it. She's actually pretty good for boss fights, but everywhere else I'm not going to recommend Titania, guys, because for one, she dies really easily, and two, you can just have a much easier and more effective time on other frames. Say we got Mesa. Mesa is probably just a much better version of Titania, in my opinion. And yeah, it's not like you can't use Titania. I actually use her to cheese some Riven challenges sometimes. And yeah, that's Titania for you. She might get a rework someday, who knows, probably not. I'll move on to Hydroid. So Hydroid is really good for farming resources. For everything else, I don't think he's very useful. You can AFK interceptions with him, but there's no real reason to do that anymore. Yeah, Hydroid is mostly just a loot frame with his Pilfering Storm Augment. You can use Corrosive Barrage, I believe it's called, for his first to strip armor, but if you're doing that, like, why don't you just bring, like, 4 Corrosive Projections, or bring Ash, or something like that. Like, bring a different armor stripping frame, or armor stripping tool, and yeah. But if you're just farming resources, sure, you can bring Hydroid, why not? I mean, you're going to be camping in a hallway just, like, being super bored anyway, so why not just get more loot for your time? Alright, so he's in C tier just because he's not really useful in a lot of missions. Like, I would never bring him to, like, Profit Taker or something like that. Although I have tried it, and his Curative Undertow, I mean, I guess you could try to make that work. Yeah. That's going to be a C from me, guys. Let's move on to Mirage. So Mirage is actually super fun, and she has some crazy weapon damage. But the problem with Mirage is that if you are not in a controlled situation, you're going to get one shot if you're in the light. And even if you're in the dark, which gives you 95% damage reduction, it's not going to be doing a lot of damage, first off, and then you can still get one shot pretty easily at higher levels. Okay, so that's the thing. Like, a lot of these frames in these lower tiers, guys, they can just be replaced by a safer frame. So, for example, we could just replace Mirage with Rhino, or we could replace Mirage with Chroma, for example. And Mirage would probably have a little bit more damage, but Mirage is going to get one shot where Chroma's never going to get one shot unless he's at like 1,000 or something. Okay, so moving on from that. Try not to waste too much time on these. We got Ash. Ash is he actually becomes C tier because his armor removal and his armor I said armor removal twice. Armor removal and invisibility. So invisibility is actually like one of the best things in the entire game. It used to be even better, surprisingly. So if any frame has invisibility, guys, they are automatically not in D tier. That's just how it is. Invisibility is so strong that you can't be in bottom tier if you have invisibility. Loki was in bottom tier earlier because he literally has his invisibility and nothing else. Nowadays, you can't disarm people, but like that's not you can just kill them as well. So you could just kill them with your melee weapon instead. So yeah, any frame that has invisibility is not going to be bottom tier. And Ash is pretty strong, like DPS wise, I guess, but he's too clunky and too slow for comparison sakes to the top tier stuff. Okay, moving on. Zephyr. Zephyr is not extremely useful, but she does have some small usage cases where you're farming Cetus Wisp, where you can like fly around. If you don't have totally upgraded Zeneric, that's pretty good. She can completely trivialize enemies with guns as long as you have good positioning, and her tornadoes are like relatively okay CC. I definitely wouldn't recommend using her tornadoes. I usually just use 3 on Zephyr. But yeah, so Zephyr could possibly be in D tier, honestly, but you know, she isn't like bad. She's usable. So I'm gonna give Zephyr C, although she is very close to D tier on this one, guys. Alright, so we're gonna move on to Mag. Mag is actually pretty good if you know the way that enemy spawns work. So if you know choke points and you know enemy spawns and things of that nature, and you have the correct weaponry and correct usage of your abilities, you can actually just completely like be a DPS in a long survival as Mag. So that's pretty fun. Besides that, she's very squishy, and she doesn't really have good utility for the team, in my opinion. So yeah, she can be good if you know what you're doing. Moving on to Frost. Frost is still pretty good because he has a couple seconds of invincibility when he initially casts his third ability, the Snow Globe. So that's basically it, though. I mean, he has some freezing and stuff, and his 4 can do some decent damage. So that's why he's not in bottom tier, because he's usable. And like, you could, there's some like a defense mission can be really good with Frost for sure. But I think Gaara takes his job, and Cora also takes his job pretty easily at this point. Also Limbo. So Frost is pretty low tier at this point, guys. But he used to be top tier like years ago. But that's not what we're talking. We're talking about 2019 right now. All right, let's move on. I'm just trying not to like spend too much time on these anymore because I've already started taking a lot of time on the bottom tier. So we got Atlas. Atlas is he has good punching attacks, and he can like be a loot buffer with his Orgaze augment. Although, yeah, if you're gonna be bringing Atlas as a loot buffer, you're definitely be bringing Necrose or Hydroid in addition, or Cora, because yeah, if you're just loot buffing as Atlas solo, that is gonna be a yikes for me, dog. Okay, so yeah, he just does DPS pretty much, but it's not very good DPS, and you're pretty much in danger when you're not punching, because you're invincible while you're punching, but when you're not punching, you can get destroyed very easily. He doesn't have very high armor. He doesn't have very high health at base. Yeah, I hope he gets a small rework when his Prime comes out, but he's gotten like 2 reworks at this point, so I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. And as we mentioned, Loki is in C tier only because he has an invisibility attack, and he has very long invisibility. He actually has the longest invisibility at base, compared to like Ashe and other frames like that. Not counting Ivara, because Ivara can be infinitely invisible. But yeah, he's literally just in C tier because of Invis, guys. And that's it. We're going to move on to B tier. So B tier are good frames that you can bring to pretty much all situations, but they're going to be more specialized in certain areas than some of the other frames where they're better in all situations. So let's start with Necrose. Necrose is, in my opinion, probably like the second best loot buffer frame now that Cora has her new augment mod. I would always bring a Necrose to a survival mission if I remember to, because I'll forget to sometimes, to be honest. And yeah, his Terrify attack is pretty good CC for like getting a res or something. And his Shadows of the Dead, although it can be really big anti-synergy with Oberon, you can still get some pretty good usage out of his tanking abilities with his Shadows of the Dead. Let's move on to Hildryn. Hildryn, pretty new frame. She's really good for arbitration. She's really good for like interceptions and stuff. As long as she has a team, I think she'll be pretty strong. Although she just has some anti-synergies with multiple corrosive projections because it gives her less armor or less shields per cast of her 2. So Hildryn pretty strong. She can do some good DPS too, just blasting an entire room with a high range build on her 1. So I definitely recommend Hildryn. Although you do probably want some arcanes with her to stay alive in high-risk situations. Okay, so let's move on to Volt. Volt, a staple in the Eidolon meta. That's one of the main reasons he's above all these other frames. He's also pretty good DPS for Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, which is one of the premier leveling spots in the game. So yeah, with those 2 things right there, guys, he's strong enough to be in B tier, in my opinion. And besides that, he can also run really fast to like speed run fissure missions, which is something a lot of people need to do. So yeah, he's in B tier, pretty close to A tier, honestly. And yeah, I'm going to recommend Volt to all players. Move on to Valkyr now. So Valkyr, basically completely melee focused. She does have her Spider-Man attack, which used to be really fun back in the day, but we can jump so high with bullet jumping nowadays that the Spider-Man attack with Valkyr is pretty useless now. But besides that, she has a crazy armor boost, crazy weapon attack speed buff with her 2. Her 3 is some minor CC that sets enemies up for finishers, very good at the melee focus. And her 4th makes her invincible and do crazy damage with her claws. So all those things stacked together, she's a very, very powerful melee frame. I would definitely recommend her to anyone that enjoys the melee. And yeah, she's just cool. Like, she's a crazy cat lady. Less crazy cat lady than Cora because she's in B tier and not S tier. But yeah, I definitely recommend Valkyr to new players and old players alike. Alright, so let's move on to Excalibur, the poster boy of the game. He's pretty good. He can blind people. He can do ranged DPS with his Exalted Blade. And that's basically where his advantages stop. It's basically just blind, then slash people. That's his playstyle. and it's a pretty effective playstyle. So yeah, you can bring Excalibur to most situations, although you might be a small detriment to your team if you are getting surrounded like by nullifiers or something. So make sure you have the correct weapons when you're going to a high-risk mission with Excalibur. And that also counts for Excalibur. Excalibur Umbra would probably be in like A tier, because he is actually a lot better at the index than normal Excalibur is. But yeah, Excalibur Umbra wasn't on this list that I made, so yeah, I put Excalibur Umbra in like A tier. Let's move on to Haro. I like Haro a lot, but the thing is, Haro is not a very good support. He is more of a solo frame than a support, but yeah, he gives crazy crit buffs to Arcwing weapons and normal weapons alike, and your teammates. He restores shields to himself and CCs with his 1. He gives multiple buffs with his 2, and he restores energy with his 3. The main problem with Haro that's holding him back from being in A or S tier is that, like I said, he's a bad support. He needs to get the kills to restore the energy. If his teammates kill stuff, he's doing basically nothing. So yeah, as a solo frame, pretty good. The problem with him, though, is like he can't be an A tier because he's not survivable enough solo. If you see in the clip right here, I have like 2,000 shields, but if enemies are not going to really care about that because shield is not affected by armor, so it's actually like pretty low amounts of EHP when you put it all together. Okay, I really do like Haro though, and I wish I could put him higher. I just couldn't justify it. All right, moving on to A tier, we have Chroma. Chroma is the best Eidolon Slayer in the game. I definitely recommend Chroma to anyone that wants to do Eidolon fights at a high-ish level. So yeah, he's also really good in normal missions too, Profit Taker. But the problem with Chroma, guys, is that his third ability is basically his entire kit. His other abilities are awful. His Dragon Breath, terrible. His Dragon Turret, terrible. His second ability, I think it's Vex. It's not Vex Armor. It's some other random thing. It just gives him more health, pretty much. His 3 and his 2 are the only things you use, and those are like buff abilities. So I'm really hoping he gets his reworks soon. I know that they are working on that currently. But yeah, he's just way too boring to play. Although he is very effective at doing crazy DPS and being a crazy tank. So definitely get a Chroma Prime if you don't have one already. And yeah, you can get in Eidolon fights afterwards. The reason he's not in S tier, guys, is because he just is not very useful in like zone or objective control mission types, which were actually weighted pretty heavily in the decision making on this tier list. Okay, so we're moving on to Inaros. Inaros, one of the tankiest frames in the game, just point for point. He has like 4,000 health with the build I have, more than 4,000 probably. And he can be, if I'm going to a really high level sortie mission solo, I will bring Inaros because I know that I can throw pocket sand at people with his first ability, Desiccation, and I'll use a covert lethality dagger to one-shot basically every enemy I'm going to see in a a sortie mission. So yeah, definitely recommend him to you. He comes from Bar Rocketeer, and he has a special quest associated with him. So we also have Nova. So Nova is an A tier because she is very versatile. She has great utility, and there's lots of missions where Nova is probably the best choice of a frame to bring. Although you don't need multiple Novas, like basically ever. Another thing to keep in mind with Nova is that with the newly added Magus Lockdown Arcane, she can one-shot pretty much every enemy. And when I say pretty much every enemy, that is, I chose my words carefully there because we have a special reason that Revenant isn't S tier. Let's just say that, okay? Because Magus Lockdown got nerfed, and I don't want to call it an undocumented nerf, but they sure made a very liberal decision on which enemies can't be affected by it. So yeah, Nova really good with Magus Lockdown, can one-shot most enemies in the game, and she's just great. She can teleport across the map, she can debuff enemies, she can explode things, she has damage reduction, amazing frame, and one of my top favorites for a reason. Okay, guys, let's move on to Neja. Neja is very good. Neja is like extremely fast, very reliable. He can damage debuff with his 2. He can do CC and damage with his 4. Just a really amazing frame, guys, and I'm so happy with the rework. Like, it makes people play Neja all the time. I see Neja in like almost every public mission I do, and for good reason, because he's extremely powerful, and he's extremely reliable and safe. So yeah, definitely make sure you get a Neja. I believe he comes from the Clan Dojo as a research from the Tenno Lab. Alright, so let's move on to Garuda. Garuda, one of my favorites as well. So Garuda's really strong here because, for one, we were talking about Magus Lockdown. Garuda is amazing with Magus Lockdown, guys. She can't one-shot a level 9,000 Kuba Guardian, unfortunately, because that got nerfed, but she can one-shot basically everything else. So you use your 4th ability with Garuda, you use the Magus Lockdown Arcane, and that enemy is dead. Solo. No corrosive projection required. And yeah, that's pretty good. Besides that, she has Invincible Shield with her 1 that she can run around with. She has healing for her team and herself, and her like cat and all that stuff with her 2. She has infinite energy with her 2 and 3 combination. She's just really good, guys. She's also very survivable with an Umbra build, which I know not everyone has an Umbra build at all, but yeah, extremely tanky. I've never died in an arbitration as Garuda, so that's pretty fun. She's very underrated, and although she's not like the fastest clear of missions or anything like that, she can definitely hold her own with the big dogs, which is why she's an A tier. Alright, let's move on to Nidus. So Nidus, an amazing solo frame, amazing survival frame, and yeah, he has places in lots of very meta groups. So we have like Vaginoi, the Endo Farm, which I believe he might have had his job taken away from him by Cora, so that's why Cora's an S tier, but you can still use Nidus on Vaginoi to like pull the enemies together to kill them. He's also got he's got a lot of good augments, actually. He's got the Teeming Virulence augment mod, where he can get like insane red crits very easily with weapons like the lens and things like that. So yeah, I definitely would recommend Nidus to you. He's very hard to farm for a lot of people though, because he's on a very late game planet and he requires an annoying, tedious quest to farm him in the first place. So yeah, make sure that you get Nidus if you want to. He has innate health regen, no shields, so he can be a very fun frame. He used to be one of my favorite frames in the game, actually. So yeah, as a newer player, like I think you'll have like the most fun with Nidus out of any frame, honestly. So I definitely would recommend Nidus, and yeah, he's good in lots of situations. Then we're gonna move on to Trinity. Trinity is personally, in my personal opinion, the best healer in the game. She also restores energy. If you're going to like a really high-end mission, you're probably gonna want to bring a Trinity with you because it gives your team 75% damage reduction. Also gives your team infinite energy. She can link to enemies to remove their armor with the abating link augment mod. Just a really good frame, guys. And the main problem she has is that she is a support. So if you're playing the game solo, you're probably going to play a different frame than Trinity, although you can definitely play the game solo as Trinity and have a very successful time. Yeah, let's move on to Oberon. Oh, by the way, Oberon and Trinity are also part of the Eidolon meta. The current Eidolon meta is it's Chroma, Trinity, Volt, and then most people bring Haro. But if you don't want to bring Haro, you can bring like a second Volt or an Oberon maybe. Just or like a Rhino, honestly, because Rhino and Chroma's buffs do stack, so you could just bring both of those for crazy damage. But yeah, let's talk about Oberon really quick. So Oberon, very good Umbra Forma candidate because he scales with armor and health and power strength very well. The only problem with him is that his healing is healing over time. It's not instant healing like Trinity's is. That's why I'd rather bring a Trinity to an Eidolon fight over Oberon every time. So yeah, besides that, he has radiation debuffs, he has armor removal. He's got lots of good stuff in his kit, guys. But yeah, I just think Trinity's a better healer because of the instant healing versus the healing over time. Alright, so let's move on to Limbo. Limbo, one of the best objective control frames in the entire game. He is not an S tier because he can't really do damage himself. His damage comes from his weapons, which is not a bad thing, but definitely not like ideal. So yeah, I definitely would recommend Limbo if you know how to play him. I have a how to play Limbo guide on this channel if you'd like to check it out. It's very long, but Limbo has some weird stuff going on with his abilities anyway, so it's worth the watch in my opinion. Yeah, but amazing objective control, pretty good solo frame if you can kill enemies with your weapons. So we want Equinox. Equinox is one of the best DPS in the game. So the reason that she is not really high tier is because the way that you play Equinox is that you basically are not very tanky, and you're running around with your 4 active on your day form, and you basically need to kill stuff to fuel your day form 4th ability. And at really low levels, that can be like amazing. Like the enemies won't even see you. But at higher levels, if the enemies don't instantly die, you're gonna get one shot. So yeah, I would definitely recommend to know what you're doing, as Equinox has some very confusing abilities because there's like 6 abilities, unlike other frames that have like 4. So yeah, Equinox, really good DPS. And let's just move on. I don't want to spend too much time on these. We got Rhino. Rhino, second boat as a DPS for Eidolons compared to Chroma. So yeah, he's the thing that he has over Chroma, guys, is he has status immune while he's in his iron skin, which is really useful in a lot of situations. So I would definitely recommend a Rhino to all players. Rhino Prime if you can obtain it. He does really good damage too. He can also damage buff his teammates if they're close enough to him. Same thing with Chroma though. So yeah, he's also got good CC with his 4th. He's just a good all-around frame that can be useful in late game situations. Although he does start getting one shot at really high levels, so be careful about that one. Let's move on to S tier. So S tier is the top of the top, guys. These are the best frames, best in like almost all situations. And yeah, there's going to be a very specific reason why Revenant is here in the S tier, although he is good in lots of situations as well. Like, I would definitely recommend bringing Revenant to lots of different mission types. Okay, we're running out of video stuff here. Let's just keep going anyway. So let's start on the far left. So Gaara, S tier. Gaara is amazing for arbitration, excavation. She's amazing for survival. She's amazing for pretty much everything. You could even bring her to Eidolon fights if you really want to, and Prophet Taker fights. So the main thing about Gaara, guys, is that her second ability, it stacks up damage infinitely. You can get up to like millions and millions of damage with Gaara's second ability, and that is damage per second around you. So if you get stacked up to like 2 million damage or whatever, you can just walk over an enemy and just one-shot them. No weapons required. But yeah, it's not really useful. Well, actually it is super useful, but it's not like necessary is what I wanted to say. But that's the thing, like, you don't need to always scale it to 1 million damage. You can just have it at like 100,000 damage and just one-shot everything in the mission anyway. So yeah, Gaara is amazing. She can give damage reduction to her teammates. So like she can give that 1 million damage per second thing to her teammates if you stack it up correctly. And she can also do objective control with her 4 and all this stuff. If you bring Vazarin, the Vazarin focus school on Gaara to an arbitration, you are going to be like one of the most valuable team members possible. So I definitely recommend that to you. Let's move on. We have Cora. Cora used to be like one of the like disliked frames in the community, but look at this now, guys. Cora, one of the best frames in the game. She just got a new augment mod where she can get tons of loot. I definitely recommend bringing Cora to like basically any mission. Besides Eidolon fights, you don't really need to bring her to Eidolon fights. You could, I guess, but it's definitely not recommended. So yeah, Kuba Survival, she's the best Kuba Survival frame, and she's just like, she can whip things. I've used her as a DPS and ESO a lot. Man, she's just so good. I'm so happy that Cora is top tier now. And that's like not even like half of it, guys. She's got good CC. She is the reason that Vauban is bottom tier, honestly. She just destroys Vauban in like every single way. And yeah, I'm just gonna move on now to Sarin. Sarin, I'm gonna say she's the best DPS in the game. And the reason she's the best DPS in the game, her first ability strips armor and does damage over time. Her fourth ability halves enemy HP and also does damage over time. And the ways that these abilities are coded, the corrosive damage from her 1, it just scales amazing, guys. If the enemy has armor, it also gives them damage reduction. But the way that the armor removal works from her 1 is it's taking the armor away, and then the viral damage from her 4 does more damage to enemies without armor. So it really works out well. You can kill basically any enemy in the game up into a very high level. And even then, like if you're at a really high level, you're using your armor removal as a debuffer to help your teammates kill stuff. All right, let's move on to Mesa. So Mesa is in contention with Sarin as the best DPS. The way Mesa works is that she's really good against like boss fights and just like in general if you mod her correctly. And she used to be really good in Eidolons, but she actually got nerfed in Eidolons, and I would not recommend her for Eidolon fights anymore. Although the fact that she got nerfed there and she's still in S tier should show you how strong this frame is. It's basically an aimbot that you just activate and just kill the entire room, deactivate it, keep moving. You get 95% damage reduction to projectiles. She's also got a radial disarm with her 2. And yeah, she's just amazing, guys. Definitely make sure you get a Mesa Prime if you don't have one yet. I could not highly recommend that anymore. Like, really, it's amazing. Let's move on to Octavia. Octavia is a good utility frame, and you can actually bring her to Eidolon fights, you can bring her to Prophet Taker, you can bring her to arbitrations, all that stuff. Really good for Octavia. She can damage buff her teammates, she can give her teammates invisibility, all this stuff, guys. It's amazing. Like, really, Octavia is probably one of the strongest frames in the game that nobody really plays that much. So, yeah, if you'd like to see Octavia against the Prophet Taker, I have some videos on my channel, because basically, whenever I do Prophet Taker, I only play Octavia. Like, that should be an indicator of how good she actually is for that. Yeah, if you bring her in addition to a Chroma or something, that Prophet Taker is dead. That thing is dead. Okay, so let's move on to the final 2 frames. So we have Ivara and we have Revenant. So Ivara and Revenant, the reasons that they are in S tier, guys, is because the way that they can play the game is different than other frames. So, for example, for Ivara, she can go permanently invisible. If you use energy regeneration and her sleep arrow, or not her sleep arrow, her cloaking arrow and her third ability in combination, to like restore your energy whenever your energy is about to run out, and you stay in the cloak bubble. And she also has the sleep arrow, which is another version of her first ability, and that will let you basically cheese arbitration solo. So you can actually go to like rank 100 or level 100 or whatever they're called, wave 100 in arbitration solo as Ivara. And yeah, it literally is a thing you can do. You just need to make sure you stay awake and pause the game when you're feeling tired or whatever. But yeah, you just basically have enemies walk in close to you, you put them all to sleep, and you stab them with a dagger in the face, and they're dead, as long as you have the Covert Lethality mod equipped. She can also be used in Eidolon fights as a DPS. I wouldn't really recommend her for Prophet Taker, because Prophet Taker will still attack you when you're invisible. And yeah, you're not going to usually have like an organized squad for Prophet Taker, but maybe you will. But yeah, people use her for Eidolons as a DPS a lot. You can actually use her Navigator ability, which is her second, which lets you steer the projectile around. And you can just steer the projectile onto the Eidolon's limb and then detonate it as soon as you want to. I usually use the Sancti Castanas. I don't really play her for Eidolons very often, but I have tried it a couple times, and it's definitely fun. So yeah, if you want a change of pace, maybe try Ivara for an Eidolon fight. But make sure you tell your team first before you jump into that. And then our final frame, guys, we have Revenant. So Revenant, amazing for the Index, amazing for long survivals if you know what you're doing. And one of the main reasons he's here is that he has good utility, he's got good tank, and yeah. You know I said that Magus Lockdown got nerfed earlier? So against a specific enemy, the Kuba Guardian, which is an enemy that you will encounter in Kuva missions and Kuva survival, Revenant is actually the only frame in the game, or like the only method in the game, to kill a level 9999 Kuva Guardian instantly. So the way it works is that you actually need to use his Reeve ability, which is his like smoke cloud. He turns into like a smoke cloud and like runs forward. You need to use that to kill the Kuva Guardians, because Magus Lockdown used to work on them, but it got nerfed, so it doesn't work anymore. So you need to use Revenant if you want to do those really high-end runs, which is fine, because, you know, Revenant's a really fun frame to play. If anyone ever tells you, but here's the thing, guys, if anyone ever tells you that Revenant is only a laser bot, like his 4, that person does not know how to play Revenant, and they probably like played him like for like 2 or 3 missions ever, okay? Revenant is so much more than just a 4 laser bot. He's got the mind control attack, which it makes you do more damage to those enemies when you dash through them with your Reeve. He's got his Mesmer skin, one of the best survivability tools in the game. He's got his lasers too. Like you don't need to use his lasers, but you can use his lasers if you really want to. It's got adaptive damage. It's honestly just amazing, guys. You could even ignore self-damage as Revenant. Revenant has so much stuff going on, and people just don't give him enough respect. So yeah, I'm definitely going to put him in S tier for the fact that his scaling damage is the best in the game. He's also got good survivability and just good utility in general. Okay, guys, so that's my tier list. I hope that you guys found this video enjoyable. Of course, like there's these are subject to change. Like I said, I could probably put Zephyr in bottom tier, and I could move Banshee up 1 tier or something like that. So there's little changes you can make, but hopefully this is like a good general idea. And like I said, this is like taking the entire game into account. This is not just Eidolons. This is not just Kuva survival. This is like everything. Okay, guys? So I hope you found this helpful. There'll be lots of videos coming this week with the Jovian Complex update on PC. We're getting 5 new weapons. We're getting the Wisp Warframe. We are getting new game mode, new boss fight, new mods, lots of stuff. Gonna be a fun week, guys. And yeah, I can't wait to see you guys there. I will see you next time. Please like, share, subscribe, and have a nice night. Peace, guys.